Elizabeth Pridgen joins me today. Thank you for joining me, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great to see you again. How's writing going? We're here to talk about your books today. How's everything going?
Oh, it is going really great. Like I'm having a really fun time, especially working on several projects all at once and almost being a year now, almost 2 years now since Zero Gravity got published. So I'm really excited about that too.
Nice, nice. Great. We're going to talk
Thanks.
about that book. Congratulations on all those books. And how many books, how many full-length books is it now?
Zero Gravity is my third one. So I've had
Third.
three under my belt.
Okay, okay. Well, let's rewind back to the beginning then. Where did this all start? At what point did you start writing? At what point were you interested in writing?
So I began writing when I was like about 11 years old, just for fun. And I feel like I was always kind of destined to write because I definitely had a lot more imagination than other kids around me. And they're like, what is wrong with you? so then a few years later, I joined a writing workshop at NC State University. And when I was like 13 or 14, and that's really when it started to just take off. And I found myself getting a lot more confident in the skill. And then when I left that workshop in 2017, I believe, no, 2016, a year later, I got my first novel published. So that's crazy to me that I was somehow able to pull that off.
Nice, nice. Tell me about the first novel. What was that like? Was it,
Sure.
and what's the name of that book?
It's called The Life of David O. Penning. So
And
I
that's the Western, right?
Yeah, the one I wrote after my great uncle. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit loosely based off of a true story. So, and my great uncle was really into westerns, and we had a pretty close relationship. So I'll never forget. I really wanted to write a novel at that point. I was like 17, 16 at the time. And so we had the idea. He was like, why don't you write a Western, like to try something new? So I was like, okay, we'll do that. So it took me about 6 months to write the novel and then like maybe not 3 months to edit it. And then I remember sending it off to Outlaws Publishing LLC in Texas. And this is a really big company that had like Paul L. Thompson, who was a best selling Western author, J.C. Halsey, who was like the founder of the whole company. And he actually looked at the manuscript and he read it in like a day, sent me an email back, gave me a publishing contract. And that was how my first novel got published the day after I sent it into the publishing company.
Wow, that's amazing. What a
I
story.
was
That's
shocked.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is
Mhm.
very, very quick. But did you have you didn't have any interest in Westerns before that? Did you read any Westerns or
I read a few, but like not religiously, I guess.
yeah,
So
yeah.
most of the ones that my uncle like referenced to me, they were like really, really like written many, many years ago. So I took reference off that, and then a few movies like Open Range with Kevin Costner. There were a few others too. Um, so those were some novels I really enjoyed looking into.
Wow, that's great. That's that started it all. That was your first book, and what was the second book?
The second one was Never After. That one was published like a year after. So that one was science fiction. And definitely went from like one big genre to another big genre like that quickly in just the span of like a year. So that one, I actually wrote the whole manuscript of that one when I was like 16 or 17. And so I looked at the manuscript and I was like, it'd be really cool if I got this one published too. So JC Halsey looked at it, even though Outlaws Publishing typically does Westerns, they made the exception for that because they were pretty impressed with how well written it was, or that's what JC Halsey said. And I think he published it on New Year's Eve of 2019, I want to say. I could be wrong on that one, but it's been so long ago.
Good. So that was that. How was that book was then written before the first published one?
Yeah, it was written long before the first published
Wow.
one.
So is that your first written full length novel?
Yeah, so it's my first written full length novel. Um, but then I kind of put that one on hold to write the Western because I just felt like I was completely invested into that one. I wanted to pour everything into that one. And it's like no um I don't want to say like disfavoring of the first novel that I wrote because that was the first one I ever wrote. So um I just wanted to kind of explore my horizons a little bit more as a writer at that time.
Are those both of those books still out there and available?
Yes, they are still out there. They're unavailable. It's been many, many years. So they should be still out there, I believe, on Amazon and I believe through Outlaws Publishing LLC's website.
Great, great. So this brings us to the third book. The Is this Zero Gravity? Its title.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about this book. What is this book about?
So this one was pretty interesting to write about. So this one is about a world where there's no gravity, where it could be lost at any moment at any given time. And they're called zero gravity attacks. So when it happens, like there's gravity lost for however long, it could be like 5 seconds, 5 minutes, maybe hours, maybe days. You never know how long it'll last. You never know how long, when it will come. Um, and there are several survivors out there, very few of them in the United States. One of them is named Marlowe. She's trying to survive and find her partner who she's been separated from. There's also terrorists on the loose called the Ravagers who have taken over the United States, and the government has collapsed. So there's definitely a lot going on in the novel and a lot to unpack from there.
Great, great. And well, tell me about how you wrote this book. How did you come up with these ideas, these concepts?
Sure, sure. So, fun story. I remember taking a science fiction class during my undergrad year at NC State University, and I cannot remember the professor's name to save my life, but I just remember there being several different books there. One of the books that really inspired me the most was Slaughterhouse Five. I really love that novel. That was one of my favorite ones of all time in that class. So, and I specifically remember the line "So it goes" through that one. Um, and seeing how he was able to create such a really compelling story, one that really kept you on your feet, I really wanted something like that. And at the same breath, I also wanted something that was different and one that people, in a way, could find interesting and be like, oh, we've never seen this happen before in a novel. And so during that time, I wrote the novel, had a few drafts. Like I probably went through about 2 or 3 drafts at most, and it took me about a year to write the whole novel. Um, Probably if I wasn't in college at the time, it probably would have taken me about 6 or 8 months. But I really wanted to make sure that this novel was at its best, for one, and I really wanted to go above and beyond the other two that I had already done. And so I really remember sending it off to several friends of mine who were also into um, science fiction. They're like, I've never seen anything like this before. I said, but this is actually crazy. Like, I love the characters. Like, I love the setting of the book. Like, there's no hope really, but it's kind of a race against time. And you want to make sure that all these characters succeed and get to like the final end, I guess, which is safety for them and just another day alive for them.
And when is the book set? Like in time period?
Uh, 2019. So it's set in 2019. So when I wrote this, it was like 2021, and I knew I couldn't do it like during 2020, like the pandemic era. I didn't want it to be during that time, so I chose 2019 to keep it pretty close to that time and be like, okay, I could look back at this time period and make a change to it. So,
Where who knows if during the pandemic, who knows?
right. Mm-hmm.
Cool, cool. That's well. And so this is kind of your second area, your second book of science fiction.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Is that your genre? Is that really what you want to spend more time writing?
Definitely. I really love science fiction, and when I was in undergrad for NC State, at first, and even during my time at the writers workshop, I was like, what genre do I want to do? And I was interested in dramatic writing. I was interested in probably southern writing too for a little bit, but for some reason I just kept going back to science fiction, and I felt like it was kind of my calling from that point on, especially after writing Zero Gravity and Never After.
What writers have inspired you?
Definitely Kurt Vonnegut. That's a big one. And Asimov, that's a really big one too. Um, so those were the two writers who really inspired me the most, by far, when it came to science fiction writing. Just how they were able to craft really interesting characters and also really interesting worlds that you could see through a different perspective of, especially Vonnegut. I definitely think he's my favorite writer by far.
Right. For zero gravity, did you have to do any research, or did you just kind of rely on imagination?
I would say kind of both. I did have to rely on research just to be like, okay, how could someone survive in a world like this? And what would happen if there's no gravity loss at all? Apparently, there you can lose oxygen because you do need oxygen to keep gravity levels stable. So that was kind of a little bit of a hard one to navigate through. And I'm thinking, well, how could I change that a little bit, I guess? Um, and for my imagination, it was mostly relying on creating characters, like the Ravagers. I used my imagination for that one. Marlowe and Uncle David and her whole family, definitely used my imagination for that one as well. And I wanted it to be different with Marlowe. Um, for a protagonist, wanted her to be not traditional, someone that you kind of don't really like at first, but then when you look back into her story, you understand why she is the way she is, just surviving through this world.
Nice. It's such a unique concept, this
Mhm.
plot, and that's something I've read in the reviews about the characters and the development there. They're very likable, and so that's important in fiction. What was different about writing this novel than the other two?
Oh, definitely the characters. I would say that was definitely the big one for me because all of them are pretty different. Because you have Marlowe, who is really hard to get to know, kind of a hard person to get through. Then you have her partner Jaden, who you think you like at first, but then when you realize what's going on with her and Marlowe, you begin to not like him very well. Then with Uncle David, you also are kind of like on the fence with him because it's this old man. He's very snappy and ornery, but then you realize how helpful he's been to her in his life. And then, along with the other survivors, she gets to know, like Tyler, Ian, Claudia, all of them have their own different backstories. So that was really the biggest difference by far. And of course, the concept of random gravity loss, which that really kept me on edge because I'm just like, I don't want this to be too unbelievable, but at the same breath, I also wanted to make sure that it keeps readers invested and keep them on their toes.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't read it yet, but I have a copy. It's at my office. Could you hold up the book and show us the wonderful cover art there, Zero Gravity?
Yep.
Well, cover art job. What formats does this book come in?
It comes in a 12-foot font. It comes in hardcover, paperback, ebook on Kindle. So those three alone. There is no audiobook version yet, but I'm hoping that'll change soon.
Nice. So you're interested in doing one of those.
Oh
That's a
yeah,
great
definitely.
new area. Yeah, a lot of people now listen to the book, so it's nice to have those different options, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Nice, nice. What I also have a book with a zero in the title recently, so we have that in common. But I'm going to read the book and I'm going to get back to you on it and write a review. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
It's on my summer reading list. And what tell me what else you're working on now?
So I got a really cool one. So this one I'm pretty excited about, but honestly, I feel like I get excited about anything when it comes to writing, especially now that I get older. Um, so this I actually took my current project from an idea I had when I was like 14 or 15 years old during my time at the writers workshop at State. Some of my friends at the workshop even got to read it, and they're like, "Oh, I'd love to see this as a book or as a movie." It's called Indescribable Ink. And it's a novel about a guy who has been cursed with these tattoos that can move across his body and come out of his hands as real life objects. So, and Um, he's not going after the person who cursed him because it is a witch who has passed away. Instead, he is going after the boss of this company called the Technology Reinforcement. Um, this boss was eager to kill him in an attempt to assassinate him, and it failed because he's still alive, and now he's going after him, and he believes that there are some illegal practices in the Technology Reinforcement, and he wants to bring it to an end. So
Whoa, that's far out. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, there's a lot going
tattoo
on in
thing
this.
is like, yeah, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, and I was telling my boyfriend about it the other day, and he was like, "You have all this going on in this one book." I was like, "How are you going to keep it down?" And I was like, "I have no clue."
How far along are you with the book now? Is it coming along
um,
now?
so I am still on the first draft, but I'm very peculiar about my first drafts because I don't expect them to be 100% perfect by far. That's one thing that I felt like I've had a problem with growing up. First, I was like, oh, first draft, it's gonna be pitch perfect. No, like it never happens. So uh I'm about to wrap up on the first draft and then I'm about to revise, look back into some of the characters, like what could I improve upon them, what could I improve upon the plot. So that's where I am now with the novel.
Would you consider this one a science fiction also?
Um, it's
Or
funny I mentioned that too. So with the whole curse thing, I feel like that falls more into fantasy, but also the
yeah,
technology
yeah.
reinforcement. There is some science fiction there, but not a lot compared to Zero Gravity and Never After. So I feel like it's kind of an even mix of fantasy and science fiction for
So
me,
you're like
which is
supernatural things going on.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely like still genre fiction though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Nice. Lots of fun. What is that process with your writing now that you have that draft? Did you start this draft and do for all of your books? Do you map things out? Do you know how they're going to end before you begin them, or are you one of the types
Um,
of writers that just kind
mhm.
of runs with it and what happens happens?
At first, when I was a teenager, I would just kind of run with it. And I really had no way of planning it out. I was really disorganized back then. And looking back at it now, after almost doing this for a little over 10 years, I'm like, how did I do that? With just like running on completely late, just the idea. So after writing Never After, which I didn't write it with an outline, I just went straight into it. So after writing that one, I was like, I'm going to use outlines from here on out. So with the Life of David Earl, I used an outline for that one. For Zero Gravity, I actually rewrote the outline for Zero Gravity 3 times before getting started on the draft. And with Indescribable Ink, I've rewritten the outline like at least 4 or 5 times for that one because I feel like it's just kind of the perfectionist in me to make sure that I have a really good foundation for my book before I even get started on the first draft. And it's notes about characters, like in their personalities, how they act, what happens in each chapter. So that's kind of my process now as a writer.
Nice. Really carefully look ahead, map things out. Development is
Oh yeah.
important. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
definitely a big part of it all.
Hmm.
Nice. Is
And
it?
mhm.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so when I was, it was really hard to kind of change that because I'd been doing it for so long. And then when I became 18 and when I released the Life of David L. Penning, I was like, okay, I can't really be this careless anymore, you know? So I had to really up the ante and be careful with my work because even though I write for the fun of it and also with the hopes of other readers to enjoy it, I don't want people to perceive me as being careless with my work because I've been doing this for so long that it's kind of my first love. And I definitely want to show that, yeah, I can do this. Like, because I've been doing this for almost 10 years now.
So it's a way of being more careful with the final product, the production of it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely smart to plan. There's still writers out there that kind of let it go and they run on it and they just find themselves in a at the end. And I don't know how they do that because I have to plan things out to know where it's going. I think most of
Yeah. I don't know how they do it either because it's amazing to me too. And like, kudos to them too for how they do it. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
never. Yeah.
But for most of us, yeah, it is better to plan things and kind of know where. Well, and sometimes you can't even help it. You have a vision and you just know where it's ending. I mean, a couple of my books, I knew the ending before I even knew the beginning, you know? So,
Yeah. And I
yeah.
knew the ending for Zero Gravity too, and Indescribable Ink. So like I had it like envisioned. I was like, all right, like I'm just gonna write down the ending. I was like, if it doesn't connect to the whole book, a book, fine, I can make some adjustments, but I know how it's gonna end.
Yeah, yeah. Do you handwrite any notes?
Um, Sometimes, like if I'm at work, because I work as a substitute teacher too on the sideline, and if I am doing in the middle of a class, like if they're doing independent work, and if
Oh,
I have
that's
an
a
idea,
great
I'll
time
just
to get
scribble it down.
going.
Or if I'm on break at work, I'll just write it down. And then when I get back home from work, I'll just go ahead and write it down in a document. And I was just like, but it's weird. Every time before I go to bed, I always have like the best ideas that come to my mind. I was like, I gotta sleep. Like, why are you doing this to me? So I have to keep a notebook by my bed and just write down every single note that I have. And it'll be like 1, 2 o'clock before I ever go to sleep. So
So you get a lot of good ideas right there, right before you fall asleep.
yeah. And I was just
Nice.
like, come on. I was like, come on, universe. Like, why are you doing this to me? Like,
Yeah, yeah, you can't help it. Writers can't help these
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Hmm.
So then later you'll transfer everything into the computer and that's where you write your drafts, right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah. Anything else about your process that you want to share? Anything that if you think about anything you wonder about, maybe that's different or people
Um,
might find curious.
I will say the older I get, the more I appreciate the use of beta readers. That is a very helpful process because it makes you realize like how people are going to react to the story at first, and you get a close glimpse of how it can go. Like maybe some readers don't understand the character, and maybe you need to go back and make some more revisions to the character, or maybe the plot doesn't really make sense, and you need to look back into the plot and see what you can adjust. So with Zero Gravity too, I did that for that too. Before I ever got it published, I made sure to give it to a few beta readers before I ever sent it out. And thankfully, I did that because it gave me time to really look back and make the adjustments I needed because they didn't really like Marlowe too well. They didn't really like how the Ravagers were detailed. And I was like, ooh, I got to go fix this real quick. Yeah.
That'll happen. Wow, that's an amazing really amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, and it really reminds me of the time back at the workshop too, where we would have people read our story, and before we would ever read it on the final day, there would always be people looking at it. And some instructors would be like, I don't really understand where this is going from. Maybe you can make a few tweaks. Maybe the dialogue needs to be tweaked a little bit. So it reminds me a lot of that. And that's why I really give a lot of credit to the workshop for helping me out and prepare me professionally as a writer too.
That's great. That's the feedback is an excellent way to really gauge how the audience responds to it and what appeals to people. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a great idea to have some trusted people look at your
Yeah.
writing before you send it out and get it going. So that's always good classic idea.
Mm-hmm.
Anything
100%.
else you want to share about your writing? Anything that's what kind of people would enjoy this book, Zero Gravity?
Oh, definitely people I think who really love science fiction. Definitely those who love where it feels like there's no hope at all and you don't know how they're going to get through it. Like so books that really keep you on edge. Um those who really like survival books, I feel like that would be one as well. Maybe Southern literature too, because there are some characters who have Southern heritage, like Uncle David. He's a Vietnam War veteran from Georgia. Marlowe's from Georgia too. And there's several who I think would really enjoy that as well.
Do you take a lot of those characters from real people? Are they inspired by?
Yes. So I'm so glad you asked that. So um I know like I take a lot of references from people in my life. So with the life of David L. Penning, that was actually my great uncle for that one. Um, and then with Never After, the robot character, I got a little bit of inspiration from my dad actually for that one. Um, and for Zero Gravity, Marlo was actually based on one of my old friends who was actually a Marine veteran. So that one was pretty cool. And for Tyler, Ian, and Claudia, they were actually based off of friends I made from my grad school seminar. So, and they're named after all my friends from the grad school seminar too. So that was my way of thanking them for the book.
Nice. So like a tribute to these people from
Oh
your
yeah, for
life.
sure.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice.
Mhm.
I have to be careful with names, and I definitely have characters that are tributes to different people. They're based on real people, but names become different, and I shift things around. Sometimes I'll name a character, and it's the same name as somebody else, but it's not that person, so it could confuse.
Mhm.
Oh no, so I have to be careful. Is it a good person, or is it a protagonist or an antagonist? Are they portrayed
Mhm.
accurately? And then there's just some names I stay away from completely.
Yeah, that's me too. Because I'm just like, yeah, I'm not gonna have names of those like who I really know very well. Like, let's say, really close family members. I can't name them like that. Like,
Yeah,
especially like in a negative light, I could not do that.
yeah, that's difficult. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, and in terms of like I was going to ask about we talked about the setting, we talked about the characters, and the very unique plot that you have going on
Thank you.
um, is there hope at the end? You said that this book is a book that does provide like hope in a situation that's just gone wrong. Is it an inspiration
Yeah, there's
in that way?
mhm. There's definitely hope at the end because I'm not gonna really go into a lot of spoilers for that part because it's such a big one. So I will say that there is a little bit of hope in that one. I'm not gonna say like how big or how small
Yeah, don't
the
give it
hope
away.
is.
That's it. Keep it.
Right, right. Um, but there is a little bit of hope. But I remember I actually thought about doing an alternate ending to
Ooh,
Zero Gravity. So I shared it with my beta readers, and when they read it, they're like, "No, that's not how the novel can
don't do it.
end."
Really? So that was a
They're like,
deciding factor, huh?
right. And I
Wow.
had three alternate endings to Zero Gravity. So I wish I could talk about every single ending for that one, but there's too many spoilers involved, so I can't really go too in depth with it. But one I will say was like doom and gloom.
Oh
The second
wow. Okay.
Yeah, the second one was like the happy medium of like doom and gloom and hope, and then the third one was way too much hope that I felt like.
Too
So
much hope. It was
yeah,
too
yeah.
happy of an
So
ending. Yeah.
I had three options, like three insurance policies for the ending.
Nice. Well, is there any possibility of a sequel to that book? Or
I have thought about it, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, never say never because I really enjoyed writing this book, and I enjoyed writing characters like Marlo, Uncle David, and Tyler, Ian, and Claudia. Like I really, really enjoyed that. So I have thought about it. Maybe I will in a few years from now, but we'll see. Time will tell.
thank you for joining me today, Elizabeth Pridgen. The new book,
Thank you
Zero
for having me.
Gravity. Yeah, Zero Gravity, new important book. Check it out. We will link to it below.
Thank you for having me again.